What is up, everybody? Apurva Pandey here. And this video is about operationalizing your startup. So there's some of you that are raising money and need to do your financials properly. There's some of you that you just need to do some cost cutting to, get more profits in your business. And there's some of you that are hiring and need to find really good talent that can execute. This process is going to solve a lot of problems, like 90% of the problems for all three of those initiatives that you have. So that's why this video is going to be super important to you. And the reason it's going to be important is because up until now, you've been doing a lot of things unconsciously. You're unconsciously competent, which is the highest level of mastery. And what we need to do is make that conscious. As Carl Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it's going to direct your life and you will call it fate. And so that at which you do at the highest level is at that unconscious level. We need to pull that out and bring it to the conscious level so you can delegate and manage it, so you can figure out what costs there are, and so you can explain it in an articulate fashion to investors as well. So that's what this is all about. Here's a high level of what we're going to go over in this video. One, we're just going to go over an overview of what the entire system of your startup actually looks like. Two, we're going to go over mission, vision, values, what that means, why it's actually important, and why it's not just paper. Three, we're going to go over value chain, which is the step-by-step process of taking a stranger all the way through your product and sales process, marketing process, to becoming a happy, excited, and referring customer. Then we're going to go over automating tracking, why that's important. After that, we're going to go over some roles and responsibilities, how to actually delegate and assign these things that you're operationalizing to people. Six, we're going to go over your zone of genius, where you succeed as an entrepreneur, and then competitive advantage and how to identify those things. And lastly, we're going to go over reviews, iterations, and cadences, how you should actually use some processes to continually optimize this system that we're about to go into. And the reason we do this is because a company is a system first and then a culture. A lot of people talk culture, how to actually, they have a great company culture that hits goals, et cetera, et cetera. But you can't have a culture without a system. Because when things go wrong and you start blaming people instead of a system, that's when you have a bad culture. Anytime you're playing any sports game as a team, the second the other side, your opponents, start arguing with each other, with themselves, for sake of a better term, that's when they lose. So we can't have you guys losing within your startup. You can't be blaming your people. You need to blame your systems first and build systems that attract great people, that build great cultures, that get you to where you want to go. And the truth is, you really can't fix, grow, or delegate a system if you haven't created it consciously. And like I said, a lot of us are great at creating things, but we do it unconsciously. We're just masters at it, so we don't think about it when we do it. And that's great when you're getting stuff done. It's not great when you're watching someone else get stuff done. So that's why we're going through this process. And there's a couple different inputs and outputs, okay? The inputs to this system are the ingredients through your mission, vision, values. That's what's going to dictate how you build your systems, who you attract, what your company stands for. The outputs you guys are going to get are going to be the tracking, the KPIs that you guys get. And for those of you that don't know, KPIs means key performance indicators, which are basically just numbers that tell you how your business is doing. Your North Star percentage, so like, are you getting closer or further away from your mission? And then how much cash you have in the bank. And the process to identify those things is your value chain and the KPIs that influence that value chain. Cool. As always, if you have any questions about any of this stuff, ping us in the Slack group, ask us in the Q&A calls, ask us in the one-on-one calls. Cool. We're here to clear this up as much as possible because this is really, really important to know. And when things go wrong, you'll know which part of the process went wrong. And so really quick, let's go over mission, vision, and values. This is going to be the ingredients to your startup. So the mission is going to be the big change you wish to see in the world. What is that change that you envision? And then the vision is actually going to be a quantifiable way to measure that change. And we're also going to call that a North Star metric. So a really simple example of this is Facebook wanted to connect more people. They quantified that by the number of people that were connected through Facebook. And that's how they reached the 100 million, billion, multi-billion user base that they have, is they just hack towards that. And what's really cool about this vision is it makes your job as a manager or as an operator of your business really easy, because you can just have this go out and every single decision any employee makes will be made based on that vision. So the downsides of this is something you've seen what's happening, like the downsides of this are something you've seen happen at Facebook, where the employees used to make decisions solely based on if the company was going to grow or not based on that decision. And so, in order to make sure we don't stray too far from the noble path, what you need to do is instill a list of values. So that way your vision is achieved in an ethical, moral, happy way. And if you know me well, you know morals is like a gray area. So we'll say a net positive way. Let's say it that way. It's a little bit better. So your values are your personal standards for achieving that vision and mission. What are things that you believe or what you stand for that will let you achieve your vision and mission? And there's a really simple process. I've probably walked you through this already. To identify those values, just list out things that you hate. The opposite of those are your values. And so these things need to be hyper clear. You cannot build a great team, a great company without these things. Actually, let me take a step back. You can build a great team, great company without these things, but you cannot build it consciously, and you will not know what to fix when things go wrong. And you will not know why you're upset at employees if you don't know your values. You can usually point to a really specific value or a couple of values of why someone doesn't fit in or does fit in. This is extremely important, this values section right here. You'll start noticing people having almost like mini mental breakdowns, or like they'll get like physically upset when their values don't align with the business's values. And so it'll help you keep an eye out for two things. One is high performers within your value system, but also low performers that are going to be triggered by certain things that are within your values. So make sure you outline these things. It'll basically give you like prescient, almost omniscient capabilities when you're building your business. I'm serious. Like I can tell just with one daily huddle when I'm working with you guys who's going to stay and who's not going to be able to stay. All right, moving on. What you want to do next is once you have your vision, mission, and values outlined, what you want to do is your value chain modeling and your value chain cost modeling. So what you're going to do is you're going to break your business into 5 different pieces. One is leads. How do you acquire leads and build your list? 2 is conversion. So for you guys doing sales calls, sales process, that's sales calls. For you guys doing e-commerce stuff, it's add to carts. Even SaaS stuff, that'll be like your free trials and add to carts. Then your sale. So actually invoicing or actually getting someone to pay. Then it's going to be your product. How do you deliver your product? And then lastly, it's going to be reselling, upselling, or cross-selling your customers. And so just list all those steps out. And so I've given you an example of our business. These are all of the steps of our business. The costs are different. This is an older one, but you can see there's about 25 steps that people take when they go through our business, from actually being a prospect all the way to buying different products that we refer to them, and also just buying like higher tiers. And so what you want to do is just break that down all the way, all the steps you take, identify what tools that you need to use for those steps, identify what resource you need to use for those steps, summarize the tool cost. That'll be like your conservative cost for your business. At the worst case, what your burn rate's going to be. Then you want to identify your resource cost. And then you can identify what your burn rate is right now. And then I like putting in education costs in there too. And you can put advisory costs here. So we'll call that education/advisory costs. And then identify what your business is going to be when you have access to the best knowledge in the world as well. And that will usually give you a really simple, conservative, medium, and aggressive model of your business. And so the conservative one will probably get you to 6 figures. The medium one will probably get you to 7 figures. So your tools plus resources, and then tools plus resources plus education or advisory is what's going to get you to 8 figures. Probably 9 figures too, if you do it properly. So once you have all of that outlined, if you know you need to cut costs, go ahead and create like a future value chain. So a lot of steps that you have that are outlined right now can probably be consolidated. So go ahead and consolidate them, then cost it out, and then identify what the difference is annualized. So for example, you can see here that 567 for the aggressive versus before it was 805 for us. So that's like, $250,000 we just saved just by doing some cost modeling, and, made life a lot easier. And then you can articulate this for your investors. Anyway, so go ahead and do that. And then you're going to end up getting a list of steps that people are going to go through. Here's what you're going to do next. You're going to go and identify what KPIs you need for each. So for example, for us, we have positive responses here. So from our messages and outreach and ads and everything, if someone responds positively, there's a KPI that someone's in charge of. Then we have the conversion. So that's like if a call is booked for us. So that's someone's in charge of that KPI. Then we have sales. How many sales do we get? And we measure these on like a weekly and monthly basis. And then we identify that there. How many products were delivered? So how many case studies do we create? That's the KPIs for us here. And how many people do a resell, upsell, cross sell? There's a KPI for that here. So identify what you're doing and how you're going to measure those KPIs. So as always, e-commerce people just do add to carts here. For salespeople, do sales calls here. And then make sure all those steps you have listed on this side. Once you have all those steps listed, make sure you list what tools can track each of these steps. If you don't have any tools that can track these steps, that's something we need to implement like almost immediately, because most businesses, when they get to 7 figures, they're just doing tracking manually. And the issue is human error is like 3%. You're going to have a system that's just not as great because that's going to compound over time and things are going to break. So you want to eliminate that human error by automating your tracking. And that's going to do 2 things. One is you're not going to be frustrated with employees that don't track. I think tracking is a huge waste of time. It causes a lot of unnecessary meetings. And on top of that, when people don't do it well, you lose tens of hours, guys, literally tens of hours a month, just like finding your data so that way you know what decisions you can make. You have to eliminate that process entirely. So make sure you can track all the steps in your value chain. And then also, you're going to track way better talent when tracking is automated, because no one wants to come into your business and track. That's the reason people avoid startups, is because there's like way more work to do and the money's way less, right? Like you want to eliminate one of those things, or both of those ideally. And that's what you're going to be able to do by automating the tracking and eventually consolidating your value chain. Cool. So go ahead and list your KPI, have your steps listed out here, identify what you're tracking with, and then make sure you can put that into a system down the road and just talk to us about that. That's something that we're doing with everybody. Cool. After that, we go into roles and responsibilities. This is where you will be able to build a culture for execution. Okay, so that KPI that you identified in the last step, you need to identify who is managing that KPI, who is responsible for that KPI. Is it you as the business owner? Is it the person in the department? Are they held to it every day? If it's down, who's increasing it? Are you increasing it? Are they increasing it? And then you do that by who's managing every step of the value chain. This needs to be down pat. You cannot have discrepancies in who's managing it. When execution does not happen, it's because someone is not managing a step in the value chain. And handouts are not being made properly because no one's managing that step. No one's responsible for that step. No one has ownership over that step. So no one has ownership over your company. A system is not the sum of its parts, but by managing each part, you are able to have larger amounts of control over the entire system. Okay? And there's a very nuanced difference between handing something off to someone and having them run it properly, which is delegation, versus handing something off to someone and having them run it improperly, which is abdication. And I want you to retain your throne and delegate, not abdicate your throne, right? That's really, really important. And it's okay if you do. It's okay if you've done this. It's okay if you're noticing yourself doing this right now. I have done it. I will fall back into these patterns. It's totally fine, so long as you're aware that it's happening. It will go away over time. So go ahead and do this process here to make sure someone's managing each step of the value chain. And you can even use this cost modeling section here to identify, like, we list out exactly which resource is responsible for which step. You can just do that right here. So that'll be really, really useful for you. Okay, next. We got to identify your zone of genius and your competitive advantage. People think like you can identify a competitive advantage and build a moat just by like looking at what's going on and like picking something like, oh, it's going to be product, or it's going to be like this aspect of the product, or it's going to be this aspect of the way I acquire customers. This is a really, really research process that needs to happen. And it's got to involve 2 things. One is you got to identify what out of the entire value chain, where you lie and what gives you the most energy. Okay? So, for example, I have no pleasure in identifying leads and getting positive responses. That actually drains a lot of energy for me. But in delivering product, like working with you guys, I love that. That's like really exciting for me. So for me, my zone of genius is here, and it's actually in a very specific place. Like it's actually in the auditing and inspecting of your data is where I have the most excitement about my life and business. And so if I move myself there, so you just want to drag this circle and move it over, then I know that I'm giving the business the most effective use of my time, but also everybody else knows that it's taken care of. Because if I enjoy it, I will take care of it. Here's what's happening right now if you're feeling burnt out. You are involved in way too many KPIs and you're managing way too many steps of the value chain. And so as your business grows, your job gets harder and you can't see a way out. This is your way out. Identify your zone of genius. That's extremely important. You are not losing, you're not burning out because you don't have time. You're burning out because you're losing sight of your vision and mission, and you're not leveraging yourself properly. And you will leverage yourself properly if you align yourself with your vision and mission, but also you put yourself in your zone of genius so that way your energy and motivation and just like ability to execute snowballs. Okay? That's one. Number two is your competitive advantage. Look, like I said, everybody just like licks their finger and puts it in the air and sees which way the wind's blowing to identify competitive advantage. What you have to do for this section is look at what everybody else in the market's doing. What piece of the value chain? It's literally like 2 to 4 steps, sometimes more depending on your industry, but it's going to be a couple different steps that make them the best at what they do, and then make yourself the best at something different. So for example, Apple's genius was in the design of their computers. It was not in the hardware, it was not in the software, it was not in any of those things. It was literally just in the design and branding. So they identified what everybody else was doing. They're like, we're not going to do that. We're not going to look ugly. We're going to do really well in design and branding. You need to identify what that is for yourself. And it literally could be you pick better lists than everybody else, so you acquire customers better. You acquire like more ideal customers. It could be your salespeople are not salesy. It could be you upsell people into the greatest packages ever, or you cross-sell them. Like it could be anything and everything. So review what your entire industry is doing and make it a habit. This should be fun for you. You should be able to break down your competitors' value chains and then identify what the gaps are in the market. What is not being served? Okay? This is a very like systematized process you can do. Don't wing it. Don't do it unconsciously. You probably have till this point. It's fine. Moving forward over the next 5-10 years, review this. Steve Jobs reviewed this, I think, every Monday for like 10-20 years. That's what made him so great. That's what a lot of the best companies do. I think even McDonald's, they made their value chain focus was on the fries, not the burgers. Like, you only come up with that if you do modeling at this level. Okay, so keep a really close eye on this. All right, cadences. So a secret that no one knows is the more attention you pay to something, the more it'll grow, because you will give more of your time and executional ability to it. Okay, so at this stage, I would follow this cadence to get you to 8 figures. So review your leads daily, review your conversion weekly, like how many calls are booked weekly, review your sales weekly, review your product success monthly, and then review your resell, upsell, cross-sell stuff quarterly. But change these according to yourself. Like, I like reviewing my sales daily. I like reviewing my product stuff weekly. So it's very personal to you as a founder. And it's really going to depend on your competitive advantage as well. But this is a good enough cadence for now. And then just hold the people that are in charge of these KPIs accountable to these reviews and see what they do to increase things. Okay? And it's not your job to like find out how to do their job better. It's your job to remind them of what the goal is, because them staring at the goal every single day will either cause them to crack or they will break their system and make a better system so that way they can execute better for you. Cool. All right, that's it. As always, ask any and all questions in the group. You can get the value chain cost modeling doc by just clicking on this right here, and there'll be a copy of this so that way you can actually put your steps or your value chain in on this presentation under this video. I hope you guys are doing great. Happy, I was going to say Monday, but happy whatever day it is, wherever you are, whenever you're watching this video, and cheers.